I just think that's a pretty long stretch for someone like Howie, who I think is going to probably want to find a way to make a couple picks between, when they would pick at 15 and then before they pick at 51. I think they would try to spread that out a little bit, and because the Eagles haven't given him a 3-year, $30 million contract offer, I think. I mean, it's going to come down to money with the Honey Badger, and at this stage with him, I would just wait until after the draft.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Joining us now is our buddy, one half of the Eagle Maven on SI. Ed Kracz jumps aboard here on Birds 365. Sorry for the miscommunication earlier, Ed. Could have been me, could have been John, could have been Xander, could have been you.
It was me. It was me. Believe me.
It was you? You're taking a hit for this?
John sent me a text 3 days ago and asked if I could do the show Friday.
See, now I should give the reminder so that I'm going to blame it on Xander. Xander took the blame. He said
no, but you put 9:20 in the text, and I just kind of breezed past it because I'm so used to 8:20, and
Yeah.
All right, so here's the most important question we're going to ask you. What the hell did you do for the last hour? Since you were here at 8:20, ready to go, and we're punching you up now. Did you conquer the world in any way from 8:20 to 9:20?
Well, no, I did not. I just kind of, I wish I had an exciting story to tell, but I really, an hour just kind of flew by.
Cup of coffee.
There
we go.
Yeah, read my book.
You watched the Today Show.
No, I didn't watch television. I read a book. I brought the trash out.
What'd you read? Book. Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of this 850-page Stephen King.
Wow.
These Stephen King books, just, there's page after page. It's the one about JFK, 11/23/63, I think, or 62. I think 11/23/63, the date that Kennedy was assassinated. It's a pretty good book. I'm enjoying it.
All right, there we get.
So, that's what I did. Nothing, no big story. I didn't go out and solve the world or go for a run. I certainly didn't go for a jog down the neighborhood. That's for sure.
It's nice. You can do it. It's finally nice out. Somewhat nice out.
Yeah.
It was a little
nice.
chilly.
Sunshine. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah. All right. It's Ed's book club, not Oprah's. Should we look under our chairs? Maybe we got a free gift. Everybody at home, look under your chairs.
Damn, nothing.
The Eagles need a couple free gifts, Ed, in the draft. Jody and I have been discussing. A lot of GMs in this league talk about, billing as many needs as possible before the draft, so you don't feel the necessity to reach for a particular position. I got to tell you, Howie always talks about this being a long process, talent gathering season, and he's right. But up to this point, I think the Eagles have more needs now entering the draft than they had when they entered free agency. Is that fair or foul?
No, I think you're right. I mean, it just seems like, now Steven Nelson goes and signs down in Houston. That kind of takes another cornerback off of Howie's speed dial should the cornerback market not develop the way he hopes. But, he even said that the free agency for them is kind of about just sort of building depth at different positions, and really, he got an edge rusher in Hassan Reddick, and rebuilding that pass rush is going to really take precedence for them as the offseason goes on. I think they'll accomplish something in the draft to try to beef that up even more, and they bolstered their linebacker core a little bit, but they got a receiver, two receivers if you count the hurdler from Oregon, but they've done nothing at the cornerback spot or the safety position. I mean, they brought back Anthony Harris, which is all well and good, but, he's a stopgap, 31-year-old who I guess he's only making $2.5 million this year. So 1-year contract. I mean, they really need to address those two positions. And it's weird that we still talk about this cornerback spot. Last year was the same thing. And I remember asking Howie, after 2 rounds of the draft last year when they didn't have a cornerback yet, like what's happening at the cornerback spot? And he said, well, there are different ways to skin a cat, blah, blah, blah. First pick of the third day, they get Zach McPherson, and then they bring in Steve Nelson. So, this to me is shaping up more the same this year. I mean, if they don't get a cornerback in the draft, I will expect them to probably try to acquire one in the summertime at some point, like they did last year. And that may come via a trade like they did in 2017 with Ronald Darby coming from Buffalo for Jordan Matthews. We might see something along those lines, but it's so early in the process. But to me, cornerback and safety, the secondary, again, is a position that they need to address.
All right, Ed, I want to take you down the best guess scenario road, which I'm sure we did a month and a half ago when the Eagles had the 3 first-round picks. There were 4 possibilities of what could happen. The Eagles could stay put and take all 3 picks in exactly the spots they had them. They could trade up, target a guy, use another first-round pick, get to a spot to get a player that they thought was a franchise-type changer, the one that Howie seems to prefer. Trading down to add more draft capital, still could be in the first round, but later in the first round to add another pick, or trade out and trade a pick that's in this year's first round for a future first round pick. They already did that one. They got that done with the Saints. Are one of the 3 other options has to happen, but which one is more likely of the 2 that don't include just staying and taking the picks where they are, the 2 that they have right now, 15, 19, trade up to get a targeted player or trade back to get more draft capital? They've already got a lot of draft capital with the Saints trade. Which is more likely, trading up or trading back?
I would probably say trading back with that 18th pick. I just think the nature of this draft is so unpredictable. It's hard to find a consensus top 5 or top 10. You don't see the same guy going to the same team, and you don't know how the quarterback position is going to fit into this, or one of these 2 guys or 2 of these guys, Willis and Pickett, going to go in the top 10 and push talent even further down. So, listen, I think if the Eagles just stay put at 15 and let the draft come to them based on who's coming off the board, there's still going to be a player that they can take at 15 that I think they'll be happy with. And then with that 18th pick, listen, it's a long stretch between the 18th pick and when they pick again at 51. There's going to be a lot of good players that are going to come off the board in that span. Depth type players that can be starting players. And I just think that's a pretty long stretch for someone like Howie, who I think is going to probably want to find a way to make a couple picks between, when they would pick at 15 and then before they pick at 51. I think they would try to spread that out a little bit and have, 2 bites at the apple later in the first round and then another early second round pick before they pick again at 51. So that to me makes sense to go back from 18 to wherever, mid 20s, late 20s, and try to get another early second round pick so you can kind of space your picks out a little bit better. But that said, last year there were 2 cornerbacks they really liked in this draft, J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, and they would have taken one of those guys had they fallen to 10 or wherever. Had the Eagles been able to trade up to 8 or 9 to get one of those guys, they would have done that. So if they see a guy like Sauce Gardner, kind of floating down boards, which I don't think he will. I think he's probably a top 5 guy, but who knows? Nobody knows really. But what if Derek Stingley is sitting there at 11 or 12 with, Washington at 11 or 12 with Minnesota, and you want Stingley? I mean, I think he's the second best corner in this draft. And I think it was Todd McShay said when we had him on a conference call that he's talked to teams that have Stingley higher than Sauce Gardner. So, listen, if I could see them making a little bit of a move up if one of those guys starts to drop a little bit. But again, if I'm the Eagles, I'm thinking, listen, we have enough players that we like. We could find at 15, and let's see how this draft kind of evolves on April 28th. And let's just sit tight. Let the draft come to us. We'll take who we get, and then we'll see if we can move back with that second pick.
Well, I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to go trade up for this reason, Ed. I was looking at this and I want to run it by you. So Howie's been here for a long time, as people know. He He arrived, I think, in 2000. People forget that. So he's been with this organization for a long time. But he's been the GM since 2010. And, it's a collaborative process, as Jeffrey Lurie always points out. So we don't know who's responsible for all these picks in that time. But if you go back to 2010, which was the Brandon Graham year, I think Brandon was the 13th pick. Since then, they've gotten some really good players. They got Fletcher Cox. He was a number 12 pick. Lane Johnson was 4th overall. Carson Wentz was 2nd overall, and people can say what they want, but he helped him win a Super Bowl. And then last year, he had Devontae Smith, who was 10th overall. Now, in that same time frame, you have Danny Watkins at 23, Marcus Smith at 26, Derek Barnett at 14, Andre Dillard at 22, Jalen Reagor at 21. They can't go under 14. They can't go. They start at 15 and 18. If they want to get good players, they've only gotten a good player at 13 and above, Ed. Is that fair, or is this going to change this year?
Yeah, you forgot Nelson Aguilar in that.
I forgot Nelson. And Nelson was 19, maybe?
Yeah, I think, or 20. Yeah, right around that range. But listen, I mean, and all those guys, Aguilar had a great Super Bowl. He had a great 2017 season. Carson Wentz had the great 2017 season. So it's not like they washed out completely. Dillard, to me, still holds some value, right? I mean, he can only play left tackle. I think that they'll try to trade him. He's due his 5th-year option. They have to decide on him in May, but I don't think they're going to give him his 5th-year option, but you never know. But I think you can find a good player at 15. Again, this draft is very deep. I mean, this was a draft everybody pointed to during the pandemic where, okay, this is going to be a good draft. And I think it is. And I think you'll be able to find like a Jordan Davis, maybe. Jordan Davis might fall to 15, and he's certainly.
I would take him. I would take him.
I would absolutely take him. You could have a guy at 15 that you really like, Devontae Wyatt. You could have maybe Trent McDuffie fits in there. I don't know how much they like him, a little bit on the smaller side, but there's going to be a player that, I think they can take at 15 who will be a starting player for this team or heavily used in a rotation if it's a defensive tackle. So I could see them trading up, John, like you say, to maybe get into the top 12 somewhere, maybe 12 with the Vikings, maybe 13 with the Texans, maybe jump up 2 spots if there's someone they really like floating there. But again, it's the type of draft where if you sit tight and be patient, not one of Howie's strong suits, granted, I think they'll be fine.
All right, Ed, let's do a specific position deep dive here, and that's safety. They watched their starting safety for the last several years. McLeod leave this week.
Big loss.
Big loss. They have an opening there. I think you're part of the crew. We all like Epsy. We all appreciate what Epsy brings to the table. And we all kind of think Epsy's a role player. He's not a starter. He's not a guy who's going to be a difference maker. We like having him on the team, but he's just not a starter. But he would be their starting safety as of right now. There's a Pro Bowl level safety available that you could go get. His market apparently isn't what it should be because that's why he's not signed this far into free agency. The Eagles have at least shown some interest in him. And I'm referring to the Honey Badger. Why do you think he's not a Philadelphia Eagle yet? If he's even going to become a Philadelphia Eagle, Ed?
Well, because the Eagles haven't given him a 3-year, $30 million contract offer, I think. I mean, it's going to come down to money with the Honey Badger. And at this stage with him, I would just wait until after the draft to see, once teams come out of the draft and they say, hey, we didn't get the guy we want. We need safety help. And then maybe Mathieu gets what he wants, which is a multi-year deal starting in the double-digit millions, right? Like 10 million plus for at least 2 years. And, I don't think the Eagles are ready to go there yet. I don't think any team is ready to go there yet. And I don't think any team will be ready to go there until the draft. Now that said, maybe he'll sign on Monday or later today, with some team, but I just don't see it. I think it would be beneficial to him to wait to see. Maybe his price goes up after the draft. The team gets a little bit more, desperate when they didn't get what they wanted in the draft or hoped that they would get because of the way the board fell. But yeah, if the Eagles offer him what he wants, he'll come. I mean, it's all about, at this stage for Mathieu, I think it's all about, the money. I know he wants to play for a Super Bowl contender at this stage of his career. Maybe the Eagles just don't, fit that bill for him, and he's waiting for the Rams to increase their offer. Maybe even the Steelers, they're kind of in the mix. But I think if the Eagles gave him 3 years, $30 million, Mathieu would sign on the dotted line in a heartbeat. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that Tyrann is going to wait at least probably until after the draft, and at least in case that desperation increases in one of those cities you're talking about, Ed. One of them could be Philadelphia. So I look at the draft and we talk about edge rusher a lot. We talk about wide receiver. We talk about corner. We don't talk about safety that much because the Eagles have never taken a safety in the first round of the draft. Obviously, they're going to draft one at some point. But how high would you consider a safety in this particular draft, especially if Kyle Hamilton starts to fall because he didn't run that well at his pro day? If he falls to 15, do you think the Eagles consider him and take a first-round safety for the first time in franchise history?
I think they'd be foolish not to. If he falls to 15, my goodness, yeah, I would take him. It's interesting if he's there or Davis is there, though. Jordan Davis, I think they'd probably go with the defensive lineman over the safety. But if Davis is gone and maybe Wyatt's gone because, Hamilton is falling, so some of these teams that we think will take him could take somebody else or going to take somebody else. But I haven't seen a mock draft, I don't think, that has him falling out of the top 10.
Well, we've seen a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Have you?
One had him going down in the 20s to the Patriots. The Eagles passing on him twice.
Wow, I didn't see that. Who was that? Yeah. Your son, Jody? Was that one of your kids that made that?
Somebody on
NFL.com
or NFL Network.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm talking
NFL
about.
Network. Yeah.
This draft is so unpredictable. We just don't know how it's going to unfold. And, I don't see the Eagles and Howie making a move like he did last year when he jumped up 2 spots. It was during the draft when that deal was consummated. But if Hamilton falls and he's sitting there at 9 or 10, I think the Jets would take him at 10. But I think the Jets want to trade back. I really do. I think they want to go back out of that 10 spot. And it makes sense for the Eagles, right? The relationship between Joe and Howie, they work together. I don't know how close they are, off the field, but they did work together. They have a relationship, a good working relationship. The Eagles could jump into 10 and maybe grab Hamilton. Listen, I had them mock draft. I had them taking Dax Hill at 15, the Michigan safety. I just think this kid is so versatile. He could be like a Malcolm Jenkins type player for this team. He's 21 years old. He can play all over the defense if you wanted him to. And he's a guy that obviously if you draft a safety, you've got him for 4 or 5 years in your system to develop and to have at a price control. Look at the price that safeties went for in the offseason. It was exorbitant, the amount of money these safeties and receivers got in the offseason. So, to me, the NFL has evolved, and you have to find guys at those positions that you can bring in and develop. And maybe, to me, it feels like the right time to take a safety because I love the skill set of Dax Hill. I love if Kyle Hamilton's there, you take him. I would. But
yeah, by the way, it was Tom Fornelli from CBSSports.com who had him falling to 21 to the New England Patriots with the Eagles passing on him twice. Man, that would certainly be a conversation for Birds 365 the day after. We'll let you in on it, too. We'll just run a stream of guests coming through here to scream, what the hell were the Eagles doing not taking Kyle Hamilton?
There's going to be a lot to talk about coming out of that first round. There's no doubt. and we all like, how he likes to make trades, but it takes two to tango. And, we all say, okay, trade up, trade back, do both, whatever. But it's hard to do that. You have to find the right match. So it's not as easy. It's easier said than done. But yeah, if they pass on Hamilton twice, shame on them, because, safety is certainly a position you need to address here. If you want to be in the conversation as a Super Bowl contender, not this season, but next season, when really that's supposed to happen. This year, I don't think they're in the Super Bowl conversation, but next year they could be, depending on Jalen Hurts. But you need a safety that can come in and take control of that defense. And I just think there are two really good ones. You can get a guy in the second round, and that's probably where it's going to happen, or maybe the third round they'll take somebody. But why not get one of the best? Why not go for one of the best safeties and do something you've never done before and take one in the first round?
And that brings us to the start of the conversation, Ed. They need a safety. They need a corner. They need a defensive tackle. They need an edge rusher. They need a wide receiver.
Yeah.
There's too many damn needs on this team, Howie. So you can say and he's right, and he is right. It's a long process, talent gathering season, as he likes to call it. And they got Steve Nelson 2 days before training camp last year.
Yeah.
So you can get competent players over the summer still. And it could be the trade route, as you mentioned, with Ronald Darby during the Super Bowl year. But boy, you never know how it affects you on draft night, because maybe Jordan Davis is there, but you need a corner so badly. You take a Trent McDuffie who doesn't have the size maybe you like, or maybe you want to take an edge rusher, which I know Jody wants to take, and George Karlaftis is there, but you feel the need to take Chris Olave because you didn't get Calvin Ridley. All of this is sort of a butterfly effect. And the Eagles have put themselves in a position where, even if it's just human nature, they're going to have to lean towards certain positions. And I think that's a mistake. So I want your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned all the needs, so I just think they take the best player available at one of those positions. Gosh, there's so many, receiver, edge, safety, corner. You mentioned them all. Maybe the Eagles aren't as desperate at corner as we think they are. Because of the Tay Gowan, who I liked a lot, I got to tell you, coming out of the draft last year from Central Florida, but they feel comfortable with him, Kerry Vincent, and Zach McPherson. But if you get into training camp and you realize, hey, these guys just aren't doing it for us, then that's when you begin to think about a possibility of a trade. And, maybe that's where Jalen Reagor gets traded, right? I mean, he's been in the news this past week, the Eagles taking calls for him. I mean, that's all well, I've been told that they gave Rager's agent permission to go out and try to find a deal. But again, Howie's just not going to give him away. But if you get into the summer and you don't get a corner in this draft because you go with an edge rusher, and I agree with Joe, I would love to see them take an edge. They need a defensive tackle. They need to rebuild that defensive line for all positions on that defensive line. But if you go into the summer and Gowan and McPherson and company, they're not doing it for you, then you have to start to investigate a trade. Stephon Gilmore's still out there. He was with the Colts. Everybody thought he would sign with the Colts, but he's another guy that probably would benefit by waiting until after the draft to drive up his value. But, maybe he's available. Deshaun Elliott's still out there, a safety that has.
No, he signed with the Lions.
He did. Okay.
Because I thought that was the guy the Eagles would look at. They never did. Surprised me a little bit.
Very surprised. But there's names that maybe come to light in the summer where teams begin to look at their roster and they've been in practice for a couple of days. They had their OTAs and they start to think, we're not as strong at position X as we thought we would be. And the Eagles could feel that way at corner if nobody came, and then you start to generate a trade at that point. And to trade Jalen Reagor after June 1st is a lot better than trading him before June 1st in terms of his contract. I think it's a $7-point-something million dead money hit prior to June 1st. Post June 1st, I think it's only $1.8 million. So, that would be beneficial. So, I mean, listen, there's all sorts of ways you can go with with the position of need if they don't get it in the draft because they have so many positions. And I don't think it's a very deep group of cornerbacks. You have the ones everybody mentions, Gardner and Stingley, but then you have Booth and, Andrew Booth and Trent McDuffie and maybe Roger McCreary from Auburn is in there. But after that, I don't think it's real deep. But Cincinnati's got Kobe Bryant, but he's more of a third round guy. But, if you don't get one, you're going to have to trade for one, I think, or try to sign somebody that's out there in the weeds that they think can help. And that's why I'm not sure they take a corner in the first round. I think safety is more of a bigger need than a corner, just because they have guys at corner. Whether they're any good or not, we don't know. But they don't have really anybody at safety.
Well,
I like Marcus Epps maybe more than you guys. You look at his numbers as a 26-year-old. He played over 50% of the snaps, did very well. Can he grow in this defense in his second year? We'll see.
Well, Jody and I, real quick before you jump in, Jody, Jody and I were discussing it earlier when we were talking about veteran players. I think Jody asked me, would you rather have Honey Badger or Stephon Gilmore? And I said, for the Eagles, I'd rather have the safety because they play so much cover two anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can get by with a corner like they got by with Steve Nelson, whereas Jonathan Gannon really wants that versatile piece in the back end, like a Malcolm Jenkins, like he had in Minnesota with Harrison Smith. And that's what Mathieu does. You mentioned the kid from Michigan, Kyle Hamilton. All those guys could do that. So maybe it just makes more sense for how Jonathan Gannon wants to run his defense.
Yeah, I would go. Listen, they give you Dax Hill is more than just a safety. He's a guy that can play the Malcolm Jenkins role of, he can step into the slot. He could probably cover you as a corner if he needed to. He can play the linebacker spot. I mean, he would be a very versatile piece at 21 years old. I'm pretty high on Dax Hill, you can tell. It would shock me if the Eagles draft him, as it would Kyle Hamilton. But for it to happen with Hamilton, he would really have to slip. And maybe the guy from CBS Sports is right. You mentioned that he's sitting there at 20 and the Patriots take him, or 21 and the Eagles pass on him twice, which would be foolish. Because I really do think in this day and age and in this Jonathan Gannon defense, I think safeties are very important. And I would agree, Mathieu or Gilmore, between Mathieu and Gilmore, I would take Mathieu in this defense.
All right, Eddie, let's wrap it up on this note. Turn back the calendar 1 year ago. The coaching staff was new here to Philadelphia. They hired head coach who had no head coaching experience, limited coordinator experience. A lot of people went, who's this Sirianni guy? But the Eagles have done their drafts under Howie Roseman the way they've done their draft. And they like to say it's a collaborative effort. But that collaborative level can shift from year to year. And it probably shifted a little backwards last year because these were all guys who had just added to the organization during the offseason. Now we've had a regular season, a winning regular season, a playoff regular season. All right, they got their rear ends kicked by the Bucs in the playoffs, but they did make the playoffs. If the coaching staff's impetus into the draft was X, and this year it's X plus because of the season they had last year, how big is that plus?
Well, it's a big plus. I mean, there's familiarity now, right? I mean, Howie knows, Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni, and kind of knows what they're playing, and he, that having that familiarity should help in the draft. Identify exactly what they need to put onto this team for it to be successful. So, that familiarity, I guess that plus that you're talking about is huge. That can only help. I thought they did a nice job in the draft last year on that short notice when they brought Sirianni and Gannon in, kind of identifying players that would fit. Obviously, it was pretty easy to get a Heisman Trophy winner in here in Devontae Smith, and he looked good. But, they did a good job getting Landon Dickerson, and Milton Williams looks like a player in the third round. And I really think Zach McPherson's going to be given a lot of opportunity to win that starting job opposite Darius Slay. I think when he got some playing time last year, he did okay with it. He had his ups and downs, but really second year guy now, fourth round draft pick, he should be ready to come in and compete to start at that cornerback spot. But yeah, I think this year, if they have another draft like that, and now knowing that what Sirianni and Gannon want to do, it can only help.
All right, Ed Kracz, SI.com/NFL/Eagles. You can read Ed there. You can read me there as well if you so decide to do so. Follow him on Twitter at KratzE. You can follow him there. We're doing a lot of draft stuff currently, so make sure you stop by. I'll end it here with you, Ed. Eagles obviously start the process at 15, 18, 51. Give me one guarantee as far as a position or a player that they're going to come out in those first 3 picks. No doubt about it. 100% Eagles are coming out with an edge, a receiver, or maybe a particular player.
I would say defensive tackle. I mean, you look at that group. Cox, one year-to-year player now.
Jody's shaking his head at you. That's a Jody. That's a Jody disimproving look.
I'm surprised he didn't go quarterback again like he did previously. They're not taking a DT unless the big kid from Georgia falls down and somehow he's available. Because I think he, like Hamilton, is a top 5 talent. And if you can get him at 15, you just can't pass. But there's not another defensive tackle that's worthy of going. Maybe you went first 2 rounds, right, with your question, John?
Yeah.
So maybe Eddie's right at 51.
Yeah, I mean, Perion Winfrey there or Logan Hall there, perhaps a second round. I just think they need to get somebody on that defensive line. And it could be an edge. You know, that would be my 1A if I had to pick one position guaranteed. But I'll go tackle. Because they did bring Barnett back. Think about Barnett. I mean, listen, I think they could use an edge as well. You know who I really like in this draft, real quick, is that kid from Northern Iowa, Trevor Penning, the offensive lineman.
Penning, yeah.
What kind of shock would that be if the Eagles end up taking an offensive lineman?
Hey, Lane's going to be 32.
Yeah, and he'll be their swing tackle. And this guy plays like John Runyon, man. He's got that attitude. Plays, gives you a couple shots after the whistle. I love that about Trevor Penning. So,
well, I would say you got to move Andre Dillard. So, what is one more for you? We'll sneak it in. What the hell?
Yeah.
Is Andre Dillard going to be here on May 1st? And is Jalen Reagor going to be here on May 1st?
May 1st? Okay, I'll say yes on May 1st. After June 1st, I'm not sure either player is here, to be honest with you. I would probably say no to at least one of them. And it would probably be Dillard just because of the positional value that he gives you. He's a left tackle. And I think he's shown that he is good when he gets on the field. Good enough for a team to trade for. So
good enough for some of these crappy teams. Yeah.
Yeah. Reagor, maybe not so much, but definitely Dillard. I can see him being traded. And listen, then you're going to need a swing tackle. Okay. So keep Trevor Penning in mind as my sleeper pick for the Philadelphia
Raven Eagles. Clark is your swing tackle, Ed Kracz.
Okay.
Quote the Raven.
For nevermore.
They will be taking offensive linemen. I'm just not
we
sure.
We started with Stephen King. We end with Edgar Allan Poe. How about that for a show?
More 3rd round than they're out for the Eagles.
Probably right, Jody. Probably right. But I just love this Penning kid, man. I would love to see him come to Philadelphia. He'd be fun to cover and fun to watch.
You're right. He's a player, but he'll be gone when the Eagles are thinking about taking an offensive lineman. Ed, good stuff. We're certainly going to get you up again before the draft. Tell Stephen King we said hi.
All right, fellas. Nevermore.
There is Ed Kracz here with us on Birch.
There we are. I said Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe. You get it all on this show.
He is a literal knucklehead. That's what he is, because he likes quarterback and offensive line for the Eagles. All right, coming back, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We got